The Conservative Party has been advised to get ready for an election at any time following the 1st of January, when Isaac Levido, the party's campaign director, has been moved from Downing Street to Conservative campaign headquarters. And so, he's a serious looking young man with a beard and a sort of a wistful gaze. And it's the Prime Minister's also said absolutely that there's going to be an election this year. So from that information alone, we know that Rishi Sunak is not going to wait until the end of December in order to call an election. He's going to go before that. He might go in October. He might do a sort of John Major, try to do a John Major 92 and go in May. And certainly the idea that Mr. Hunt, is going to do his budget early enough suggests that there's a strong possibility that May could well be the time. The Labour Party is saying it's the worst kept secret in Westminster that the Conservative Party will call an election in May. But I don't think that's so certain. I don't think it's so certain because Rishi Sunak has barely been in the job for a year. He has been in the job for a year, but much of that was mopping up Liz Truss's appalling mess. Liz Truss, whose only competence, actually she didn't even have a competence at that, whose only competence seemed to be her firm gestures. Her firm gestures, if you remember all this stuff here, with this ridiculous flapping hands that she seemed to have inherited from Thunderbirds or from Trumpton, and both Thunderbirds and the whole Jerry Anderson thing, absolutely superb, and Trumpton and the Magic Roundabout and all those things. But the point is, you don't expect your politician to have been schooled in the delights of marionation or the great animation houses that produced the children's television that entertained us just before the news. It's as if that children's entertainment sort of percolated up into the news broadcasts themselves. Wrong decade, but right interpretation, I'm afraid, because Liz Truss, who I was reliably informed, took lessons on gestures. Can you imagine Liz Truss doing hand job after hand job, practicing, and still failing to get any sense of reality? That, along with her winsome eulogizing of Kwasi Kwarteng's prodigious package, and you get a much better idea of the stupidity of her month in office, overshadowed, of course, by the sudden death of Her Majesty the Queen and the funeral and all the arrangements of that. And oh dear, from King Charles when she turns up for her routine audience. Well might he say that. Because Rishi Sunak spent a year sorting out her mess. And cleaning up seems to be all Rishi Sunak is capable of doing. Now he's finally got a chance to prove what he is worth. I must say it's a sharp intake of breath and a groan, because rather than hiding behind Suella Braverman and putting up with Suella Braverman's mad, extreme right fanaticism, her absurd ideology, that is now revealed as lying at the heart, as being the beating pulse of this insane Prime Minister. I don't understand where he came from. And I don't understand where he thinks he's going other than parliamentary defeat, other than probably one of the greatest defeats in election history. Because the Labour Party faces the most extraordinary hurdle. It is going to have to get more seats in order to get a working majority I think, just slightly more seats than Tony Blair got in 1997, and that was an astonishing landslide. This would have to be a super landslide, not a landslide, it would have to be an avalanche. And for that to occur, that would be the destruction of the Conservative Party. So, so Keir Starmer would have to get at least 144 seats in the next election. He would have to get more than that to get a working majority. He would have a working majority with 144 seats because he could then, I suspect, rely on a deal with the SNP or with other left of centre parties, like, for example, the Liberal Party. But I think it's expecting a great deal, even of Rishi Sunak, even of Sir Keir Starmer. And so far, Sir Keir Starmer hasn't really offered any clear water between himself and the Conservative Party. If anything, what he's doing is playing softball and saying, well, we're going to do pretty well the same. So instead of saying that the whole migration issue, which is supposed to be at the heart of everybody's concerns, the heart of everybody's concerns is the cost of living in the NHS. Migration is very low down, but I'm sure the moment I say that, the comment section is going to be filled with people saying, it's all we care about, migration! Like some sort of pontifical disciples of Suella Braverman. But please, go ahead, please, do leave these comments. I'd be very entertained. But really, what what Boris and others should have said during the referendum debate is we shall replace the huge migration that we need in order to make the health service work with not migrants from Europe, but migrants from other countries beyond Europe. Because that's what we have to do. We can't rein in migration and still preserve the services that we want and need. Because it doesn't work. Our country is grinding to a halt. This absurdity about jumping on about legal or illegal migration just so the government looks as if it's doing something, all it is doing is cutting its nose to spite its face. And if the Labour Party wishes to go down the same route, they're going to fall foul of the same nonsense. The workforce simply doesn't exist in this country to make up for the shortfall that we face following the referendum. Somebody today said to me, why can't we get better teachers? I don't think they were referring to me, by the way. But somebody today did. One of my students today did say to me, "Why can't if I were a head teacher, I would get better teachers in my school." And I thought that was a very, very entertaining comment. And I said, "Well, why haven't you got better teachers?" And the student said, "Well, maybe we need to use money that's used elsewhere. Maybe we need to get rid of the dining room and invest that money in getting better teachers." And then he thought about it for a while, and he said, "Oh, but if there were better teachers, wouldn't we have interviewed them? Wouldn't we have employed them already?" And the answer is yes. Those better teachers don't exist. To train them up will take years. To train up doctors will take years. They don't exist in this country. We have to import them from outside. And we've got rid of some of the best doctors, some of the best nurses by closing our borders to Europe. And we're making foreigners feel so deeply unwelcome. Why would they want to come here? To be treated with contempt. And we've got so many good workers sitting in hotels waiting for the Home Office to finally get off its backside and process them. And meanwhile, we're paying £8 million a day, when these people will be much better off engaged in proper work, paying taxes and contributing to the health and focus and function of our society. So it is time for Keir Starmer to draw a distinction between the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, but I fear we're not going to see much of that, because I think he fears that he might wobble the boat. Oh, sorry, we shouldn't be making any further reference to small boats, should we? So, if we wait until May for the next election, and we see in May the loss of lots of Conservative councillors, then the Conservative machine is going to struggle even harder to score a victory in an autumn election, or God forbid, a winter, early January election. A spring election might be at a time when we don't notice the energy bills, when we won't see the wave of small boats coming across the channel in better weather in the summer. We won't see the mortgages rocketing. We won't be caught up in anything worse with the cost of living, because we won't have seen the effect of the interest rate rises. And maybe by the spring we might at least have some sort of signature on the Rwanda deal, which can at least be passed off as a success. But I'm afraid the reality is different. I can't think of any government that has managed 5 elections in a row, first of all, so this is the end of the road in terms of history, and I don't think Rishi Sunak is the person to buck the trend of history, number one. And number two, I think the country is tired, and it's going to take more than a signature on a Rwanda deal to convince people that this is a viable solution, and indeed a solution to a problem that actually exists. We are spending so much money wallpapering over cracks that should never have been there in the first place if people like Lord Frost had actually done their job. Lord Frost, who failed to set up an alternative convention, an alternative agreement with Europe to replace the Dublin III Protocol. The lack of the Dublin III Protocol is exactly why we cannot send people back to France, because they don't belong in France in the first place. And because we don't know where they came from, or how long they've been sojourning across Europe by the time they came to the French borders, because we no longer have access to that information, because we surrendered that when we left Europe at Brexit, because Lord Frost hadn't done his homework. Same sort of nonsense with Northern Ireland. Why do we not have Stormont working? Because Lord Frost didn't do his homework. And we've had to rely on this incredible mammoth effort from Chris Heaton-Harris to actually get something, the Windsor Framework. That is something. It's not enough, and it certainly hasn't got the DUP back under the table, has it? Under the table. I don't think that was quite the expression I was looking for. That's more of a sort of Matt Hancock expression, is, "Oh, let's get under the table if the stationery cupboard isn't available. We'll make the furniture move." Yeah, there we are. But I don't think Rishi Sunak's going to make anything move, except for a little bowel movement, and I think that's going to be a very unpleasant experience for the entire Conservative Party.